It was just another late shift at Walmart, around 11:30 p.m., when the store was finally starting to calm down. The bright fluorescent lights hummed above me as I made my way toward the employee restroom before clocking out. At that hour, the aisles were quiet. The chatter of customers had died down, and the only sounds left were the dull buzz of the lights and the occasional crackle of the intercom. I pushed open the heavy bathroom door, and that familiar cold draft hit me. The place smelled faintly of bleach, a sign the janitor had been in not long before. A couple of stalls were closed, but one near the end caught my attention. The door was slightly ajar. When I pushed it open, I nearly screamed. Inside, a woman was sitting on the toilet, not using it, just sitting there. Her posture was stiff, her head bowed low, her long dark hair hanging in tangled strands that covered her face completely. Startled, I stammered an apology. Sorry, I didn't think anyone was in here." But she didn't move. She didn't respond at all. I froze in place, my hand still gripping the stall door. For a moment, I considered whether she was sick or maybe even unconscious. I was about to ask if she was okay when she suddenly laughed. It wasn't a cheerful laugh, or even the kind of unsettling giggle you hear from someone unstable. No. This laugh was broken, croaky, like it was straining through her throat. My skin prickled as the sound echoed off the tiled walls. I backed away slowly, my heart hammering. And then, just as I turned, she lifted her head. Her face was pale, almost gray, as if the life had been drained from it. Black mascara streaks ran down her cheeks like long smeared tears, but it was her eyes that froze me in place. They were bloodshot, wide, staring straight into mine with an intensity that made my chest tighten. And then she smiled. It was the kind of smile that didn't feel human, too wide, too forced, her lips trembling as though holding back another fit of laughter. That was enough for me. I bolted out of the restroom, nearly slipping on the freshly mopped tiles, and ran toward the break room. My co-workers looked at me like I was crazy when I tried to explain, but two of them decided to check it out with me. We went back into the restroom together, but when we searched every stall, it was empty. Completely empty. There were no wet footprints, no signs anyone had been there at all. The two co-workers just shook their heads and told me I was probably overtired. But later, one of the older overnight workers pulled me aside. He asked me if I'd seen the bathroom woman. When I asked what he meant, he told me about a story he'd heard, that years ago, a woman had taken her life in that same restroom, late one night after the store had closed. Since then, people had reported strange things. Some had seen her. Others said they'd heard her laughter when the restroom was empty. I never used that bathroom again after that night. And every time I walk past it during a shift, I swear I can feel her eyes watching me, waiting for me to open that stall door again. It was close to midnight, and Walmart was nearly deserted except for a few late-night shoppers and the overnight staff restocking shelves. The store always felt strange at that hour, too big, too quiet, and almost hollow. The constant hum of the freezers in the grocery section was the only thing breaking the silence. I was assigned to clean up around the front registers, pushing stray carts back to the holding area. I'd done it 1,000 times before, but that night, something felt off. The kind of off where the hair on your neck rises even though nothing's technically wrong. I grabbed one of the abandoned carts and started rolling it down the main aisle. Its wheels squeaked with that uneven, wobbly rhythm they always had. Nothing unusual, until it stopped. Just stopped. Dead still. I pushed harder, thinking maybe the wheel had jammed, but then the cart moved itself. It rolled forward a few feet, slowly at first, and then picked up speed like someone invisible was shoving it. I let go instantly and just stared. That's when it happened. The cart let out a sound I will never forget, a high-pitched, ear-splitting scream, not the squeal of bad wheels or the scrape of metal. A scream. Human. Piercing. It echoed through the empty aisles, bouncing off the shelves until it felt like it was coming from every direction. I staggered backward, nearly tripping over myself. My first thought was that maybe a child had somehow gotten stuck inside it. But when I looked closer, the cart was completely empty. Just a bare metal frame, still vibrating slightly from the force of the sound. One of the stock boys came running over, asking if I had heard it too. He looked pale, his hands trembling as he pointed at the cart. Before I could answer, the thing rolled again, this time spinning in a slow circle as if mocking us. And then, without warning, the scream erupted again. Louder, more violent. It was so sharp it made my ears ring, like nails dragging across a chalkboard, but amplified to a shriek that clawed into your chest. We both bolted, left the cart sitting there in the middle of the aisle and ran straight into the break room, slamming the door shut behind us. The manager thought we were joking when we told him what had happened. But when he went out to check for himself, the cart was gone. Not in the aisle, not in the cart corral, not anywhere. The overnight crew searched the entire store, inside and outside. They never found it. The next night, when I came in for my shift, I passed the back corner of the store near the lawn and garden section. And there it was, the same cart, rusted slightly, its wheels bent, just sitting there like it had been waiting for me. I didn't touch it, didn't even go near it, because the moment I looked at it, I swear I could hear the faintest trace of that scream again, distant, muffled, but real. And that's when I realized something. That sound wasn't just random. It wasn't mechanical. It was desperate. It was the scream of someone, or something, trapped, using that cart to let us know it was still here. To this day, nobody knows what happened to that cart. Sometimes new hires claim to hear strange noises near the lawn and garden section, but they laugh it off. I don't laugh, because I know the truth. Once you've heard a cart scream, you never forget it. There's something unnerving about Walmart after 11 p.m. The bright fluorescent lights make every aisle feel too exposed, but at the same time, the silence makes you feel like you're wandering through a dead city. The store isn't meant to be that empty, and when it is, it takes on a strange, haunted quality. That's where I was one night, picking up a few things after work. I only needed laundry detergent, but I found myself wandering deeper into the store, half awake and dragging my feet. Somehow I ended up in the toy section. The toy aisle at that hour was eerie. Shelves lined with dolls that stared blankly out of their boxes, action figures with painted-on smiles, and the faint sound of a motion-activated toy that must have glitched, playing a muffled jingle in the distance. As I walked past the shelves, I saw something that froze me in place. At the very end of the aisle, half hidden behind a rack of stuffed animals, was a man. At first glance, he looked like any other shopper, tall, wearing a faded hoodie, jeans a little too long, with the cuffs dragging along the floor. But there was something off about him. He wasn't browsing. He wasn't even moving. He was standing perfectly still. His head was tilted down, almost at an unnatural angle, as if he was staring intently at the dolls on the lowest shelf. His hands hung loosely at his sides, fingers twitching ever so slightly. I cleared my throat, thinking maybe he hadn't noticed me walk in. No reaction. Excuse me, I said, forcing a nervous laugh. Didn't mean to get in your way. Nothing. He didn't move an inch. That's when I noticed something worse. His chest wasn't rising or falling, no breath. He wasn't just standing still. He was completely motionless, like a mannequin someone had left in the wrong section. I took a step back, my shoes squeaking on the tile. The sound echoed down the empty aisle and his head twitched. Not turned, not shifted. It jerked, like someone had yanked invisible strings. His chin lifted just enough for me to see his face. And God, I wish I hadn't. His skin looked too pale, almost gray under the lights. His eyes were wide open, unblinking, glassy. And yet his mouth was curled into the faintest, strangest smile. It wasn't warm. It wasn't friendly. It was a smile that said, "I see you." I felt my stomach drop. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but my legs wouldn't move. I just stood there, staring at him, while he stared back, frozen in that impossible posture. Then, without warning, he took a step forward. The sound of his shoe dragging against the floor was deafening in the silence. Another step, slow, deliberate. His body didn't move naturally. It was stiff, jerky, like his joints weren't connected right. I turned and bolted, heart pounding in my ears. I didn't look back until I reached the main aisle. When I did, the toy section was empty. Completely empty. The man was gone. I ran straight to the self-checkout, scanning my detergent with shaking hands. I told the cashier what I saw, expecting her to laugh at me, but she just gave me a strange look and lowered her voice. "You saw him too?" she asked. I froze. She explained that several employees had complained about a man in the toy aisle late at night. Same description, tall, pale, hoodie. But when security checked the cameras, no one was there. Just customers reacting, running, or whispering, but never the man himself. I don't shop at Walmart that late anymore, and if I do, I avoid the toy section entirely, because sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I still see him standing there, frozen among the dolls, waiting for someone else to wander down the wrong aisle. The frozen food aisle at Walmart has always unsettled me. It's too cold, too quiet, and the fluorescent lights overhead make everything look sterile, like a morgue. Rows of glass doors reflect your movements, giving you the uneasy feeling that you're never really alone. One late evening, I stopped in after work to grab some frozen dinners. The store was nearly empty, just me, a couple of night stalkers, and a cashier up front. I wheeled my cart down the frozen aisle, the wheels clicking against the linoleum. The air felt colder than usual, almost biting, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. As I bent to grab a pizza from the bottom shelf, I noticed movement in the glass reflection of the freezer door. At first I thought it was me, but the reflection didn't line up. The figure wasn't bending. It wasn't reaching for food. It was just standing there. I froze. Slowly, I lifted my head and turned around. No one. The aisle stretched behind me, empty and quiet. My heart pounded, but I told myself it was just the warped reflection. Glass can play tricks, right? I opened the door, grabbed the pizza, and shoved it into my cart. When I looked back at the glass, the figure was closer, clearer. A tall shadow, human-shaped but featureless. No face, no details. Just a dark silhouette standing where no one stood. My throat tightened. I wheeled my cart forward, the sound of the wheels echoing too loud in the aisle. I told myself, "Don't look, don't look." But I did. I couldn't help it. Every freezer door I passed reflected the same thing, the shadow keeping pace with me. Sometimes it appeared a step behind, sometimes a step ahead. Always moving when I moved, but never exactly where I was. By the time I reached the end of the aisle, sweat had broken out across my forehead despite the cold. I turned quickly into the next section, away from the freezers, and leaned against a shelf to catch my breath. That's when I heard it. A long, low scrape, like fingernails dragging down glass. It came from the frozen aisle. My blood ran cold. I peeked around the corner, heart hammering in my chest. The aisle looked empty, but the sound continued. Slow, deliberate, moving from door to door, closer and closer, as if something was tracing the glass. I wanted to leave right then. But my cart was still halfway down the aisle, abandoned where I'd left it. Against every instinct, I forced myself back in. The air was frigid now, colder than before. My breath puffed out in front of me like smoke, and when I reached for my cart, I noticed something on the freezer glass. Handprints, clear as day, pressed against the inside of the doors, smudged and dripping like they'd been left by something wet and freezing. They weren't mine, they weren't anyone's. They were too long, the fingers stretched unnaturally. The scrape came again, this time right behind me. I whipped around, but the aisle was empty. Nothing but my reflection staring back at me from a dozen freezer doors. Only it wasn't just my reflection anymore. Behind my mirrored image stood the shadow, taller than me, broader, leaning closer to the glass, as if it wanted to push through. I bolted, left my cart, left the food, and sprinted straight to the front of the store. The cashier gave me a confused look, but I didn't stop. I didn't even explain. I didn't go back to that Walmart for weeks, and when I finally did, I avoided the frozen section entirely. But sometimes when I open my freezer at home late at night, I swear I see it in the reflection, that same dark figure, waiting on the other side of the glass. I used to work the late shift at Walmart. Most nights were dull, stocking shelves, cleaning aisles, and waiting for the clock to hit midnight so I could go home. But one night, something happened that still makes my skin crawl whenever I think about it. It was around 11:30 p.m. The store was nearly empty, just a handful of customers drifting through the aisles. I was in the home goods section, straightening pillows, when I noticed a woman walking past. She looked out of place. Her clothes were outdated like something from the 80s. A faded floral dress, scuffed heels, and a cardigan that looked too thin for the weather outside. She clutched her purse tightly to her chest and walked slowly, almost nervously, like she didn't know where she was. At first I thought nothing of it. Late-night shoppers are often odd, but something about her made me uneasy. She didn't seem to notice me, didn't even glance my way. A few minutes later, I saw her again, this time in the electronics section, then in grocery, then in toys, always walking slowly, clutching that purse, staring straight ahead. It was as if she was wandering aimlessly, or looking for something. I asked one of the cashiers if he'd noticed her. He shook his head, said he hadn't seen any woman matching that description all night. But I had, multiple times. Around 11:50, I spotted her once more in the clothing section. My curiosity got the better of me. I pushed my cart aside and walked toward her. "Ma'am, do you need help finding something?" I asked softly. She stopped. Slowly, she turned her head toward me. Her face was pale, almost gray, with dark circles under her eyes. But what unsettled me most were her eyes themselves, blank, glazed over, as if she wasn't really seeing me. She opened her mouth like she was about to say something, then closed it again. And before I could react, she turned down the aisle and walked away. I hurried after her. She couldn't have gotten far. But when I reached the end of the aisle, she was gone. Not in the next aisle, not in the one after that. She had completely vanished. Confused and a little shaken, I went to the front of the store to check the security monitors. Maybe she had left. But as I stood behind the counter staring at the black and white feeds, something froze me to the spot. There she was, on camera. The woman in the faded floral dress, standing motionless in the middle of an empty aisle. But here's the thing. That aisle was supposed to be right in front of me. On the monitor, I saw her standing just a few feet away. But when I looked up from the screen, the aisle was empty. Completely empty. My chest tightened. I looked back at the monitor, and she was still there, staring straight into the camera now. Her expression hollow, her eyes locked on the lens. Then, as if someone had cut the feed, the screen flickered. When it came back, she was gone. We checked the tapes the next morning. Every single camera showed nothing unusual. No woman, no figure, nothing. But I know what I saw, and every time I walk down those aisles alone late at night, I can still picture her, wandering, searching, clutching that purse to her chest, like she's still stuck there in some endless loop, a woman who never made it out of Walmart alive.